Welcome again to Recovery Church. Welcome again to Recovery Church. How you guys doing tonight? I'm Phil. I'm one of the pastors here. I'm going to share, we're starting a new series called the Triumphant Arch. And some people are, what in the world is that about? Anyone have ever heard that term before? Raise your hand if you've ever heard that term before. There's a couple people who've actually read the big book. So, well, I'm just kidding. I don't care, and this is going to sound maybe wrong, but I really don't care if you are a part of AA, CA, NA, CRSA, whatever the other A's are out there. What I care about is I want to see you live full, abundant, sober lives, and that you're growing closer to your relationship with God. How I think you do that, I do not know how people in this room are not going to do that without being part of a fellowship and without working a program. And we're talking about the Triumphant Arch, and I'm going to give you a little bit of introduction to what that is. But throughout the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there are these construction terms. And he talks about these construction terms, and he uses these as an analogy of building an archway that we walk through to a path of freedom. And it talks about the bedrock, and then it talks about the foundation, and it talks about a cornerstone, and it talks about a capstone and a keystone, and and the cement that binds them together. And all these pieces that come together to build this arch that we walk through symbolically to a pathway to freedom. And we're going to go through this series talking about that and talking about biblical principles that bind that all together. Because some of you don't necessarily know this or recognize this, but some of you are a part of NA. And NA has the basic text, which I have right here. We're going to read some of that tonight. And NA based their information off of the big book, right? And the big book based its information off the big book, right? The good book, the Bible, right? And so they're saying a lot of times the same thing in different ways to try to speak to the heart of the person who's listening. Now, we're going to go through that over the series. It's called the Triumphant Arch, and we're each going to talk about different pieces of that over the next few weeks. Tonight we're talking about the bedrock. I want you to think about for a second. You go out to the beach. Who's been out to the beach here? Most of you have been out to the beach. Some of you still in treatment are mad that I just said that. You're in Florida. It's about to snow outside in South Florida, and I'm talking about going to the beach and you're not allowed to. You go down to the sand down there, and you go try to just lay a nice little foundation and build a skyscraper. What's going to happen? The building's going to fall over, right? Yep. Because the soil is sandy, right? But if they build big buildings over on the beach, what do? They go all the way down to the bedrock. They do these pilings. You can see them when they're building the bridges, and they pound these things down, and you hear this boom, boom, boom. They do it in cities when they're building the skyscrapers, and you'll see them pound these things to get all the way down to the bedrock. And today we're going to talk about what is that bedrock spiritually for our recovery journey. If they don't get to that bedrock, you can have a beautiful building. It can look gorgeous on the outside. But what will happen eventually, it's going to fall over. So we have to get that bedrock. We have to get connected to that bedrock. We have to get the pieces together properly. To build an arch, one little thing's wrong and the whole arch comes down, doesn't it? And many of us have done that. We've kind of halfway tried to work a program. Halfway surrender. Halfway be willing. Half measures avail us nothing. So, the bedrock of this arch, the bedrock of our recovery is this. And I have a quote that will pop up there. We perceive that only through utter defeat are we able to take our first steps towards liberation and strength. Our admission of personal powerlessness finally turns out to be the firm bedrock upon which happy and merciful lives may be built. The bedrock is our admission of personal powerlessness. It's a tough pill to swallow, isn't it? Because we are some prideful people in this room, aren't we? We think we can do anything. Some of you have tried. I know I've tried. You think, I'm not like those other people. I can do it this way. I can try the Crowden program. Right? I can try that marijuana program. I can try the alcohol program, right? We try other ways. Admission of personal powerlessness. We're going to have step 1 up on the board there. You know what, Savannah? Can you stand up and read step 1 out loud and put you on the spot right now?
In front of the camera?
You don't have to stand in front of the camera, right where you're at.
We admitted we were powerless over alcohol and drugs, that our lives had become unmanageable.
Thank you. Give Savannah.
Good job, Savannah!
We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. We were powerless over our drugs. We were powerless, and our lives had become unmanageable. Some of you are still trying to do the control thing. You're not sure if you could kind of be one of those normies. Somehow you get a reset and, I can drink occasionally or smoke a joint occasionally and everything will be okay. Step 1 is that we're powerless. Our lives have become unmanageable. I'm going to tell you a little bit of my story, and I'm not putting myself up here, and I'm not going to try to say that I've had some rough life or anything like that. I've had a blessed life. I have not been on the streets. I have not had the bottom that some of you have had. In some ways, I might be a much weaker person than some of you are. And I wanted to give up and all sorts of stuff. It didn't take much for me to have thoughts of wanting to kill myself. Or much for me to just really hate myself and hate my life. Some of you have gone through horrible things before you've had those kind of thoughts. But for whatever reason, I don't know, however God made me, it didn't take much for me to hit a pretty deep brokenness in my life. So, I came to faith in Daytona Beach during the days of MTV Spring Break, before some of you were born, most of you were born, but if you've ever seen the old YouTube videos of that, it was like Girls Gone Wild every day. Again, that was before some of you were born too. But it was, I'm on the beach, and I think my brother might still be here, and we had four-wheeler stands up on the beach in Daytona Beach. And so there's literally a stage going on with a wet t-shirt contest, and there's literally just all that craziness. Everyone's there every weekend, and all the girls coming to town, and they're wanting to party, and I'm the local guy. Okay? I'm a dork, but they didn't really care. Okay? They were coming for a fun time. And I came to faith, and yet I was being pulled in that world at the same time. Somehow I had enough know or insight in myself that I knew that there was some kind of problem with my drinking, but didn't understand what really was going on. I felt that I wasn't like those people. I wasn't like my brother. I wasn't like the other people who I saw as quote-unquote real addicts. And so I would drink, I would club, I would do all that stuff, but I made a decision that I was going to go to a college, and I made the decision that I wasn't going to go to like UF or anything like that, because for some reason I had the idea if I went to one of those schools, that a party school, that I would end up dying. I just had this feeling that I was just going to dive right in and I wouldn't make it. So I came down here to a Christian school, hoping that would be my salvation, but I was still always pulled in these two worlds. And I got a job at an Episcopal church as like their assistant youth pastor. And I'm their assistant youth pastor there. And in that church, in that denomination, they had no real issue with drinking at all. That wasn't an issue for them. But it was an issue for me. And I'm drinking and partying, and it's progressing. And there's a young girl in the congregation. She's probably 12 years old. And she comes to me and has me counseling her and helping her because her mom is one of those people. She's a raging alcoholic. And so I'm helping her because I still have not accepted the fact that maybe there's some issues in my own life that I need to work on. At the university there, we had a curfew. Okay, kind of like your halfway houses. It's probably even stricter than most of your halfway houses. But we had a curfew, and the rule was that we either had to sign out for the night or be in by curfew. But I was out with friends drinking, and if I showed up drunk, I was getting kicked out of school. So I can't show back up. So I call a friend and have him sign me out on the book, so I'm going to stay out all night. So what do I do then? I keep drinking all night, right? That's what we would do. That's a smart decision, I guess. And so I'm drinking and drinking and drinking, and all of a sudden, about 3 in the morning hits me, and I realize that I have to go to the church first thing in the morning and lead a Bible study for the middle school kids. But if I stop drinking right now, what's going to happen? I'm going to crash. So what do? I keep drinking. So I keep drinking until the morning, and I show up at the church, and I walk upstairs, and I walk into the room, and the middle schools have already set up the Bible study. And I walk up there, and they have it set up in a circle for me to lead this Bible study. And I sit down, and as I sit down, I start vomiting projectile. And all of a sudden I look up, and someone has placed a garbage can between my legs, and I'm throwing up in the garbage can. And when I look up, that little girl, who I was counseling for her mother, was making eye contact with tears running down her face. Because she knew what that smell was. She knew what was going on. So in that moment I quit. But not what you think. I tried to quit drinking, but more than that, I quit the ministry. I said, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't be a hypocrite. The thought didn't come that maybe I should stop drinking. The thought came I should quit the ministry. But luckily I had some good people who walked alongside me and said, no, you're not. And they held me accountable, and they literally threw me into a wall. But they held me accountable and started walking my life. And I went on a journey for a few years of not drinking. But I'm insecure, and I'm a mess. And one of my biggest fears, believe it or not, is public speaking. And in high school, I'd actually have suicidal thoughts every time I had to give a presentation or anything like that. I would debate in my head, should I kill myself rather than giving this talk? So severe social anxiety, severe fear of that. But I'm doing well. I'm not drinking. I got a job in a Lutheran church, so it's a little different, but they're still okay with drinking. And I got a job at a Lutheran church as their youth pastor. And I'm going to have my first sermon. The first time that I'm able to give a sermon, it's going to be a Sunday night, because they're not about to let me do Sunday morning. I rarely get a Sunday morning sermon anywhere. So I'm going, but I need to get it's literally been a couple years and I haven't had a drink. But I get the bright idea in my head that I'm not like those other people. The bright idea in my head that I'm not like them, and you know what? I need to get my nerves down. I need to cut the edge off. And so the other pastors and I go to lunch, and they didn't have an issue with drinking, so I ordered a rum and Coke. And then I ordered another rum and Coke, and then I ordered another rum and Coke. And the edge was gone. And God gave me a great gift that night. Anyone in here ever see the movie Hitch?
Yeah.
Okay, Will Smith, you remember when he had the allergic reaction? Okay, those of you who remember that movie, his whole face started morphing and he just had this horrible allergic reaction. Horrible allergic reaction. God literally gave me an allergy that evening to alcohol. Cannot explain it, but he literally gave me a physical allergy to alcohol. Most people don't have that blessing. He gave that to me. So I'm up there preaching that night. I'm teaching, and I'm sharing a great story, a great message, and all of them, my tongue's like this. And there's a nurse in the audience who's starting to get concerned, and she comes up and she gives me a little cup of water because she's really afraid that this is getting bad, like something bad's going to happen, and gives me a couple Benadryl. And so I take some Benadryl as I'm up there, and that felt better, and a little bit the allergy went away, and I went on a journey for a couple of years of trying to figure out how could I control this. I went to a bunch of doctors. They put me on daily antihistamines, and I would start to take Benadryl so I could drink rather than stop having a drink. And then I walked out of that sermon that night. We'll back up there. I walked out of that sermon that night. And we had an AA meeting I met at that church. Again, that was those people. Those people. I walked out, and sitting at that table, it had been a few years had passed since that 12-year-old. Sitting at that table are people smoking cigarettes like we have outside here. Anyone know who's sitting on that table? That little girl who's holding that garbage can. She's out of meeting. She was doing well. It still didn't kick in my head that God might be telling me something. So I go on, and now I'm off the races a little bit. And I break out in nudity. Anyone else break out in nudity when they drink? Okay, I break out in nudity along with highs, so you don't want to see me covered in highs and nude. Okay? I meet this smoking hot, beautiful, wonderful girl. Wonderful. I can say that because she's not my wife, so I can still say she's smoking hot. I meet her. Gorgeous, wonderful. But I'm still drinking. And I remember one day in particular that I looked her in the eyes, and I could see, not that I could mind read, but I could tell there was fear. Am I really going to commit to him? Am I really going to take this risk with him acting like a fool like this? And then I had the thought inside of me, can I really be with her if I can't drink? I'm about to give up one of the most beautiful blessings that God ever gave to me because I wanted to have a little drink. Kind of crazy. I finally got to the point of just recognizing, Lord, I can't do this. I know you can. I'm about to throw away things. I'm about to destroy my life. I can't do this. I can't do this. Romans 7 says this, "For I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is, in my flesh. For I have the desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to, but the evil I do not want is what I keep on doing." Can anyone relate to that verse? Doesn't that sound like the insanity of this? We keep doing the things we know are not going to result in anything good. Anyone in here relapse more than one time? Okay? Why? We have to start to surrender to succeed. I want you for a second to think of your favorite football team. Mike, you might not want to think about Michigan right now, because I guess they didn't do so good. Think about your favorite football team for a moment. The game's tied. They're running. They're running, and they're about to score. They score the winning touchdown. They score the winning touchdown. Everyone put your hands up. What's this a symbol of right now?
Touchdown!
Touchdown! crazy hand-to-hand battle war. You're in the trenches. Everyone around you is dying. And there's an army barreling down at you. And they have all sorts of weapons. And they're barreling down at you. And the choice is surrender or die. What do? You raise your hands up. Everyone raise your hands up. It's a universal sign of surrender. Oftentimes, the fastest, best, most thorough way to success and thorough way, especially in recovery, is a thorough surrender. Oftentimes, the best way to victory is through surrender. There's a great paradox of recovery, a great paradox of faith, a great paradox of the Christian faith. God says to us, I give you this great gift. I give you this great gift of free will. You can do what you want with it. You can put your finger up at me and say, I've got life figured out, and I will try to manage this crazy thing and take Benadryl so I can drink, or I'm going to try to do the Kratom program. You can do that. God says you have the right to do that. I give you free will. But the paradox is, he says, when you bid your life, when you come to him and you die, when you lay it down at the foot of the cross, when you surrender your will, you get some freedom. That there's life when we give it back to him. There's freedom when we give our free will back to God. The NA Basic Text, page 20, says this: we didn't stumble into the fellowship brimming with love, honesty, and open-mindedness or willingness. When we were beaten, we became willing. Have you been beaten? Are you becoming willing? Have you had enough of your own self-will run life? It might be time for us to surrender, to give up control, and start to rest in God's control, his desire, his direction, and his will. Another paradox in the faith is this idea, when I am weak, I am strong. It's this Matthew 16, I have this one up here. 16:25-26 says this. Jesus said these words: if you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life, surrender your life for my sake, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your soul? Is there anything worth more than your soul? I want you to think about that for a second. You can have the pride, you can say, I can do this, and I could have done the same thing. And everyone's journey is different. I'm not trying to equate myself to the journeys that some of you guys have gone on. But we can try and run every detail of our lives and try to control the things that we cannot possibly manage. Take the Benadryl. We can try to do all these goofy things. You can go and get laid every single night, get high every single night. You could have all the money in the world. But in the end, if you lose your soul, what was it worth? If you're alone, hating yourself, hating this world, hating God, what did you gain? What did you gain? The big book says it this way. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideals, and the result was nil. Until we let go absolutely. Absolutely. Let's let go today. Let's surrender today. Let's dig down to the bedrock. Let that we can't, but he can. That we can't manage our we let that drug or that drink pass our lips or in our vein or through our nose or whatever crazy thing you guys want to do, we can't manage it. It's not worth the risk. We will become utterly powerless. Will you surrender your will over to God? Say, God, have your way with me. So over the next few weeks, we're going to go through these topics. Tonight we talked about the bedrock. The bedrock. Next week we're gonna talk about the foundation. And then we're going to go through in the cement and the capstone and the keystone and build a foundation, build an archway that we can walk to a pathway of freedom. I want to encourage you guys. You cannot do this in your own will. None of us can. If you have not surrendered your will, if you think you can manage this, it's time to lay it down. Will you pray with me?